much the same, yes.
And you stated that the barking started to occur 3 to 4 years ago?
I would say, it's hard to say exactly when, but I would say somewhere between 3 and 4 years ago,
And how long have you lived at Northridge?
10 years.
And when you'd hear the barking, would it be one dog or multiple dogs?
Well, sometimes it sounded like multiple dogs. I can't really tell whether it was more than one or not. It's hard to tell.
When
Mrs.
it- Oh, sorry.
Finish?
No.
Go ahead.
Fine.
Finish.
And the barking, when it would occur, how long would it go on for?
Well, it would last, sometimes, it would go on an entire day. One morning it started 7 o'clock in the morning. This is before a month ago. 7 o'clock in the morning we heard it 11 o'clock at night, and days when it was bad it would be pretty much on and off all day. It would be barking for 5 minutes and it would stop for 5 or 10 minutes and then it would start again. It was intermittent, but it was all day long. So there are days when we did not hear it, but the days that we did hear it, it was extremely uncomfortable and annoying.
Mrs. Walton, this has been on the board's radar screen for quite a while,
Mhm.
and there's been several attempts to see if this could be resolved, and it seems like we've had a couple of occasions where the dog owners on both parties have been notified, and things have quieted down. It's lasted for a couple of weeks, sometimes a little more, then it's back up again. Is this quiet period is longer than these others that you've observed?
I would say it is more quiet than it's ever been. I've heard nothing for 3 or 4 weeks. And now that I can see through the woods, I see nothing. Where previously, I would say 2 months ago, I could see an animal back there, I could see a dog back there.
Mhm.
So I don't know what's changed, but I know that it's the last 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a month. You don't realize when it stops, but it's definitely been different. And, all we hope for is that it stays the way it is right now, but I'm very fearful because for years now, it stops and it starts again. So whatever it is, I'd like it to just continue the way it's been. I don't know. I don't know. I can't see enough about what's going on over there. I think the reason that we hear dogs is because that pen, as I see it, is behind the house. It's open to our yards. It's not open to Spruce Road.
Mr. Yule?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mrs. Walton, you gave a range of from about 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Well, not all the time.
No, I understand that, Had there been any overnight barking at all?
Well, it depends what you call overnight.
Well, 1 o'clock in the morning?
I personally have not heard it at 1.
So you haven't...
I have heard neighbors complain, other neighbors, and it's actually the person that complained to me about it being during the middle of the night is someone who couldn't be here tonight. So I can't speak to the latest I've ever heard it is 11 o'clock at night.
Okay, so...
And the earliest I've heard it is 7 o'clock in
7
the morning.
o'clock in the morning. So if I
What
would-
time do you go to bed?
On a real late night, 11 o'clock. But when you go to sleep and you put your head down and it's quiet outside and it's quiet in the house, you hear sounds.
Do you hear it more in the summer, correct?
Well, we hear it, it's more objectionable in the summer because we're outside.
Right.
In the wintertime, up until quite recently, I could be sitting in my living room with the doors shut and the windows shut and hear it. Not as bad, but I could still hear it.
But as far as you know, you're speaking just solely for yourself.
On my own.
You don't know of any overnight. You have not experienced
I
any overnight.
haven't experienced it.
But some one or a few people have expressed?
One person complained to me and said, boy, wish I knew the phone numbers, I'd call it.
And is that one in Northridge
It's one of
also?
my neighbors who couldn't be here tonight. They are away. There are a few of my neighbors who couldn't be here tonight, so we're a small group tonight.
Okay, any other questions for Mrs. Walker?
Do you know whether or not your neighbor who heard the barking overnight called into animal control when they heard it?
I know that they've called in before. I don't know whether they've called in on that particular instance. What has happened is I have asked repeatedly when they're sick of listening to me, because when people complain to me about it, I say, call the dog officer, call the police, make a phone call, and the answer is, why bother? Because we've been doing this for so long, it's gotten very frustrating, because people seem to call and don't get anywhere and feel like, why bother?
Well, you do see how it makes it difficult if there's a lack of calls for
Yep.
two
But
things.
there've been many calls over the last 3 to 4 years.
But it would make it difficult for us, as
Yep.
well as the animal control officer, if there isn't
Yep.
a consistent record when it happens, unfortunately.
There was a period of time, I don't know whether it was this spring or whenever, I was calling all the time. I know there are at least a couple more neighbors that called. I couldn't tell you who called, because they don't,
I'm sure, the dog officers are here, I'm sure we're gonna wanna hear from them too.
So, I mean, he made a reference to one of them that called when we were here, I can't remember whether it was.
2 weeks ago.
Not 2 weeks ago, but the meeting in July. So, I do know that there are many other people, aside from, I know you guys have called often. I don't know who's called. I know several people here have called many times. I've probably called over the last 3 to 4 years, I've probably made 50 phone calls. So, it gets to the point where it's very difficult to get people to keep calling when there's no result from the phone calls. So,
Mr. Vino?
Could I ask you how many you've made in the last 9 months?
oh boy. I don't remember what I did yesterday, much
Well,
less.
I mean, is it 3, is it 40?
In the last 9 months, which is early in the year, I've probably made, there was a period, 8, 9,
8,
7,
okay,
less, I don't know.
okay.
Any other,
Okay.
any other questions for Mrs. Walker?
You wanna add anything?
Miss
I never
Diamond.
miss an opportunity.
Name and address, please.
Larry Diamond, 56 Northridge Drive.
Mr.
Diamond.
Delaney is gonna swear you in.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Over the last 4 weeks, I thought the dogs had gone to Florida, where I should be, because I've heard nothing over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I've lived in Northridge since 2002. The problem really started about 3 years ago. We never called the dog officer in '02, '03, '04, '05, '06. It really just got bad, I want to say, in '07, '08, and maybe some in '06. Since the board has taken the initial action, the barking has decreased significantly. I believe the barking that takes place now comes from Mr. Crester's dogs. I step out, as bad as my hearing is, the direction of where the barking is coming from is from the back of his home. I know that the other party, I think Mr. Yule can tell me that you don't bark when you get that caller, right? But It has dissipated. And I really thought, the dogs, we don't hear the dogs, we don't see them, at least for the last 30 days. Before that, the 90 days before that, there was a reduction and a decline since you first initiated action. But prior to that, it was pretty miserable if you're out there, you know. And we didn't call as many times as we complained to each other. You know, we'd complain to each other, but and Judy would say, call the dog officer. I'd say, okay, sure. I'd say, yeah, okay, sure. But I didn't call. I had gotten pretty frustrated with knowing it. And plus, I like dogs. But that's pretty much it. Questions?
Larry, over the course of a year, in the winter months,
Yeah.
the doors are closed in your homes, perhaps the dogs aren't out as much. If you go back over the 3 years, has there been a decline in the winter months, would you say, or has it been pretty consistent all this time? I'm not talking about the past
Yeah.
month.
I always, well, it's difficult because I wasn't always there, especially January, February, and March, when I'd be
Working.
doing tax return for 20 hours a day or whatever. But I wasn't always there, but Judy would say the dogs were at it again. But winter is always better because we don't go outside, as Rainey had said. It's when you're outside trying to sit around, maybe have a cocktail or whatever, that it gets that way. Or when it's a nice day in the summertime, and you open your windows, and you've just got to listen to the persistent barking. And we're not talking 5 minutes, because 5 minutes doesn't get my attention. But when it goes on for a half an hour, it does get our attention. And we've had a lot of those episodes.
Any questions for Larry from the board?
Yes, I do. Mr. Diamond, when the barking is loud and often, if you knew Spruce Road or the people that lived on Spruce
Yes.
Road, I'm not saying that you don't know anybody there,
Don't
but
know.
if you had a closer relationship with them, would that barking sound like loud enough as if there was a problem at that house? And what I mean is, if normally everything's quiet and all of a sudden these dogs are barking very loud, you'd say, geez, is there someone trying to break in? Is it noisy like that?
Sometimes we've thought that they must be barking. Something's gotten them going. Maybe it's a deer in the backyard, or maybe it's some, you know. I think the elevation of the lot and the dogs in the back, you know, if you're up on the street up there in Spruce, if you're up on the street, maybe you wouldn't hear them as much as we do, where it's the lowland straight across. But what sets them off, I'm not sure.
I mean, do they sound like dogs that are in trouble, for example, if they're feeling threatened or something like that?
I don't know,
Is there-
you know. Don't,
I mean, because that raises their crescendo sometimes.
yeah,
You
right,
get- you get
whether
the-
there's
you get the
somebody in
squeal as if
the
they got
neighborhood
hurt
or something
yeah.
like that, but, I know none of us would be out there because Mr. Crestus posted these no trespassing signs out there. But we're not out in the woods. Nothing's precipitating that barking that I can tell.
Right.
You know, not being on site, I can't tell.
Right. Thank you.
Larry, you may have said this, but you're a single dog, multiple dogs?
Multiple dogs. Multiple dogs. Yeah, but now, just that one location, as I believe it to be, Mr. Crestus' backyard that the barking is coming from predominantly.
Before you said that you were sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe, well, I'm sure,
'Cause- okay.
I'm
yeah.
sure, you know, as you can be, absent of being there with a microphone and a video, you know. But that's the yard that, when I step out, that's the yard I'm looking directly at, I'm hearing directly at,